Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. I'm sitting on my back porch on a cool March evening, waiting for my soon-to-be ex-wife who has just been served divorce papers at her workplace. I'm trying to guess how she'll react, but I'm not completely sure because I think she's lost her mind. The discovery of her affair happened 3 weeks ago on February 28th. I'll come back to that in a moment. We chose the back porch because it's secluded. We live on a 2-acre lot, so even if there's shouting, the neighbors are unlikely to hear. There's also a private investigator parked around the corner for our protection, in case one of us gets so worked up that we lose control. Sarah Elizabeth Harrison is a smart and beautiful woman. We met in graduate school in Chapel Hill. I was getting my master's in educational administration, and she was completing her master's in secondary mathematics education. She worked as a substitute teacher for 2 years. Long hours, emotional strain, dealing with difficult students and demanding parents. Full-time teaching offers more regular hours, usually 7:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. with summers off, better pay, and less daily chaos. Sarah's only potentially significant flaw was that she gets bored easily and is always looking for something new. Whether it was a new restaurant, a new hobby, or a new friend, her interest was always piqued. We discussed this during our courtship, and I made it clear that anything new was fine with me, but when it came to marriage, I was traditional. I believed you could find something new every day in a relationship with the same person for years if you put your whole heart into it. She never gave me any reason to suspect she disagreed with this philosophy. Since her somewhat restless nature was prone to wandering from the familiar to the novel, I insisted we sign a prenuptial agreement. She wasn't thrilled with the idea and felt it was an insult to her character. I explained it was a bilateral agreement that protected her as much as it protected me. She reluctantly agreed and signed. It was simple, 50-50 split on wealth accumulated during marriage, with everyone keeping 100% of what they brought in. 80-20 split if the cause of breakup was adultery. Honestly, after we signed it, I don't think either of us gave it much thought until recently. After we got married, we moved from Chapel Hill to Charlotte, North Carolina. Lower cost of living than the Research Triangle, strong economy, vibrant and growing downtown, and great career opportunities in education. Mild winters, mostly pleasant spring and fall, summers that can range from very nice to almost unbearably hot and humid. Unlike our neighbors to the north, Charlotte has that southern charm, and the barbecue in summer is fantastic. It's also a major banking center. What more do you need? In 8 years, we've both had jobs we love, a beautiful home, neighbors and friends we genuinely enjoyed, and what I thought until 3 weeks ago was a solid marriage. I say solid, not perfect. No one has a perfect marriage because there are no perfect people on the planet. From time to time we argued. I'm a convinced bottom squeezer of toothpaste tubes, and she's haphazard. She wants the dishes washed and kitchen cleaned every night, while I'm content to load the dishwasher for 3 or 4 days before running it. Yes, like every other couple in America, we could fight about all sorts of nonsense. But much more often, we took long walks in the evenings and had long conversations on the porch. Quick weekend trips to the cabin or to favorite concerts in Atlanta, Nashville, or DC were not uncommon. We enjoyed each other and talked openly and honestly about what we liked or disliked. At least that was the impression I got. Both of us were 34. We knew kids were just around the corner, and we were looking forward to being mom and dad when they came along. By now you may be wondering, am I really inadequate as a husband and just don't want to admit it? Is Sarah completely stunning and being pursued by every man she meets? Have we already considered an open marriage? Did I miss warning signs at the beginning of our relationship that Sarah would turn into a cheater? Maybe I betrayed her first and she's just getting revenge? Is her lover some irresistible guy she can't escape? Is this about changing her financial situation? Let me address these in order. First, Sarah seems genuinely pleased with our life together. I've never been called the best husband, but I've worked hard to give as much as I've gotten, and I've never heard any complaints. Second, she is a very pretty woman with a quick wit and a strong mind. She's Irish-Italian, a blonde with brown highlights, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and carries herself with confidence. Third, I can't recall any warning signals, but if I'm that oblivious, I guess I got what I deserved for falling asleep at the switch. Perhaps I should have been more attentive to her fascination with novelty. Fourth, since we've been married, I've never been inappropriate with another woman except for a friendly hello or goodbye hug. Fifth, I think the honest answer is that he is handsome, but I wouldn't say devastatingly so. He's about my height, 6 feet 1 inch, same build, about 180 pounds, trim and athletic but not ripped. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and that earnest look that screams, future educator. Sixth, he's only 26, a graduate student who's been doing his student teaching at Sarah's high school for the past 2 months. Seventh, he'll have a decent salary someday, but since she makes $55,000 and I make $95,000 as the district's financial director, I don't see the temptation of financial improvement. He won't start making real money for at least another 5 years. So as you can imagine, I have no idea how we got here. But perhaps I should share what happened over the last 3 weeks. It was the last week of February, and I was out of town for 3 days at a conference for educational administrators in Raleigh. I was supposed to be there for 4 days, but when I looked through the workshop offerings for the last day, nothing caught my eye. It had already been a productive week. On the first day, I met 3 other people from my region who were in similar positions. We eventually formed a small group and got together every night to compare notes, enjoyed good camaraderie, networked, exchanged contact information, and laughed over a few beers. On the third day, I informed them I was hitting the road first thing in the morning. Since the trip takes less than 3 hours, I didn't bother with air travel and drove myself. I-77 is a relatively quiet highway with less traffic than most interstates. On the way, I listened to a podcast about Civil War history. North Carolina has wonderful historical sites, and the podcast gave me some background before I took a quick tour before the first session of the seminar. Since I was driving, I was able to hit the road at my leisure. Since I thought I was heading home to my loving wife who would be having her first day of a 3-day weekend, I got up early and was on the road by 5 a.m. I intended to surprise her pleasantly around 8 a.m. when I arrived home. Sarah's car was not in the driveway. She drives a 2018 Honda Accord with crystal black pearl paint and never pulls into the garage unless it's raining. It hadn't rained in a week. If the car isn't in the driveway, she's not home. I was a little puzzled. We work out at the same gym, Lifetime Fitness, so she couldn't be out for a run. She always sleeps in on her first day off. But upon entering the house, I could see she hadn't been home last night. The bed was made, which never happens unless it's Saturday laundry day. There was no sign of leftovers from the previous night's dinner in the refrigerator. It was suspicious. I called Sarah, but the call went straight to voicemail. Fortunately, we both have Find My Friends on our phones, a location tracking system that works on any iPhone. I opened the app and saw that her phone was somewhere near the airport. We live in Northeast Charlotte near a private golf course called Quail Hollow. We both love golf and chose our home partly based on joining this club. The airport was on the southwest side of town. I was starting to get nervous and decided that if she answered, I would play dumb and just ask how she was doing. I figured it wouldn't occur to her this early in the day to check Find My Friends to confirm my location. I waited 15 minutes, then called her a second time. She answered, and that's when my world started to fall apart. "Hey babe," she said in a sleepy voice. "Why are you calling me so early on my day off?" "I'm sorry, Sarah." I apologized, somehow keeping my composure. "I miss you and had some time before my morning seminar. Just wanted to hear your voice." I realized from the background noise that she was sitting up in bed. Not in our bed. "It's okay, Mike. I'm always happy to talk to my favorite husband. Looks like you're still in bed, so I won't keep you up. Just wanted to tell you I love you, and I'll be home no later than dinner tomorrow night unless you want me to skip my last day and rush home. That would be wonderful, but as soon as I get up, I'm running errands right away, then having dinner with Kim and Rachel tonight. We planned it 2 weeks in advance, so I can't cancel on the girls." The girls were 2 of her teaching colleagues. She didn't say anything to hint that she wasn't at home in our bed, so I had to think fast. "Okay, babe, I'm letting you go. Hey, before you hang up, could you check the top drawer of my nightstand and tell me if I left the pen you gave me for my birthday in there? I don't have it with me, and I'm afraid I might have lost it." It was in my shirt pocket yesterday. Mike, honey, I really want to roll over and go back to sleep. Can I check it and call you back before I head out for lunch? Wrong answer. I knew I would usually get something like, I'll check. But I won't be happy if it's not there and you lost my gift. My heart was pounding hard in my chest, but somehow I kept my composure. Sure, Sarah, just don't forget to check. I'll let you go back to sleep. Sorry again for waking you up. Thanks, babe. I'll call you in a little while. Love you. At this point, I was at a loss for words, unable to utter, I love you too. I hung up the phone and headed to my car, hoping for a miracle but expecting the worst. It was a 40-minute drive from our house to the airport. I made it in 30, and I was lucky I didn't get pulled over for speeding. Every time I checked the app, her phone didn't move. If she bothered to check hers and found out I was getting close, we'd have one hell of a confrontation. However, I was sure she was so engrossed in whatever or whoever was giving her this new experience that she would just assume I was telling the truth and never bother to check my phone's location. The GPS led me to the Hampton Inn located down the street from Charlotte Douglas International Airport. I parked at the far end of the parking lot, away from the few remaining cars in front of the hotel. After a few minutes, I realized Sarah would recognize my car if she saw it, so I moved to the adjacent parking lot of the Quality Inn. I chose a spot where I could watch the comings and goings from the front door of the Hampton, but not one where she might spot my dark blue Genesis G70. I had no plan. I fought back tears time and time again. Was she really cheating on me? With whom? And why had she thrown away 8 years of what I thought was a strong, committed relationship? Had she been seduced, and would she be ashamed when found out? Could there be an innocent explanation for her lies and deception? If it was just an evening to pamper herself until I got home, she'd go to the Marriott downtown or somewhere luxurious. But why pamper herself there when there's a hot tub and pool at home? Besides, the Hampton was only 10 minutes from home, and she loved our house. None of this added up to innocence. I agonized over all of this for about an hour when she finally appeared with Derek Thompson. They held hands and exchanged what appeared to be intimate kisses as they headed toward the parking lot. Damn. That young student teacher was entertaining my wife. I snapped a couple quick photos on my phone as they embraced before getting into his car. I'd met him about 2 months ago when we attended a school district function together. I like most people and find common ground easily with just about everyone, but Derek seemed somewhat arrogant to me. When Sarah introduced us, he gripped my hand excessively firm in a handshake, as if trying to prove he was the alpha male. My dad had always taught me to look my conversation partner in the eye and offer a firm handshake, so I wasn't impressed. Our small talk was forced, and it seemed like he was constantly smirking. I mentioned this to Sarah on the way home, and her response was dismissive. You hang out with administrators a lot, Mike, and you know they can be full of themselves. Derek's not like that. Now, in the parking lot watching my marriage implode, I struggled to control my emotions. What should I do? Go to court? Hire a private investigator? I had to think about it. Most of my job involves problem solving, so I forced myself to calm down and think. After a few minutes, I had something of a plan and decided to take a chance. When they left the Hampton, they didn't have overnight bags. It didn't look like they were checking out. Maybe they were going to grab a bite to eat and then come back for an afternoon encounter. I followed the Find My Friends app and verified they had stopped about 2 miles away at a local diner. I had at least a few minutes to act. I walked back to the Hampton and entered the lobby. Thankfully, it was empty except for a middle-aged woman working the front desk. She looked up and smiled as I approached. Good morning. What can I do for you? I quickly glanced at her name tag and noticed she was wearing a wedding ring. Hi, Beth. My name is Michael. I'm having a problem, and I'm hoping you can help me. Happy to meet you, Michael, and I'll be sure to help if I can. Do you have a reservation and would like to check in early? No, Beth, I replied quietly and seriously. The couple that left about 15 minutes ago, a brunette woman and a younger blonde-haired man, did you notice them? Her cheerful expression turned more serious. Yes, I noticed them. What's the problem? I'm afraid I have one, Beth. The woman is my wife and the young man works with her. Unfortunately, I believe they are having an affair behind my back. Oh, sir, I don't know how I can help you, she said with a look of confusion on her face. Most North Carolinians are good-natured and neighborly people. They also tend to mind their own business. Beth, I'd like to look in the room they're using. I'm not going to cause trouble or make a scene at your hotel. I just need to confirm my suspicions. I'm not asking for a room key. I'm perfectly fine with someone from housekeeping letting me into the room and making sure I don't stay more than 2 minutes. I just need to verify what I suspect. I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but I see your wedding ring, and I know you understand how a spouse might feel in a situation like this. Beth thought for a moment. You seem like an honest man. The couple did strike me as odd, but what people do is none of my business. I appreciate your concerns, however. Could you please give me the woman's name? She registered them on her credit card. Of course. Her name is Sarah Harrison, and she most likely used an American Express card. I can even give you the number if you'd like. I appreciate your discretion. That seemed to do the trick, and a minute later, the Amex number was confirmed. Can you call housekeeping? I asked. No need, she replied. Thomas, she called in a loud voice. Thomas, who appeared to be a maintenance worker, came around the corner. Yes, Beth. Thomas, I'm going to step away from the counter for about 5 minutes. I'll be on the 3rd floor. You're in charge until I get back. Thomas looked like he'd just been put in command of the Pentagon. Yes, ma'am. Beth winked at me and motioned for me to follow her. We rode the elevator to the 3rd floor in silence. Neither of us knew how to make small talk when one person had just learned potentially devastating news. We walked down the hallway and stopped in front of room 319. Beth held the key card up to the reader. I hoped it would flash red and not let me in. Green light, no such luck. I walked in, and Beth stood in the doorway holding the door open. North Carolina people are also practical. If I turned out to be unstable, it would be easy for Beth to leave and call security. Looking around the room, I saw clothes scattered here and there. A man's casual button-down shirt and khakis, as well as loafers and a belt, tossed on one side of the bed. Moving to the far side, I saw what I expected, though I prayed I wouldn't. The light beige blouse I'd bought Sarah for her last birthday and a short dark blue skirt. Trying to think straight, I decided that photos and video of the room might be helpful later. I'm not a lawyer, or I would have known that any 2-bit ambulance chaser could throw the whole thing out on the grounds that it was all staged by me. Unaware of this legal nuance, I scanned the room for about 60 seconds of video, narrating as I went along. I am in room 319 of the Charlotte Airport Hampton Inn. It is 9:50 a.m. on Thursday, February 28, 2024. I am in a hotel room that was booked and paid for by my wife, Sarah Harrison, using her American Express card. Last night, she checked into this room with a student teacher from our school district named Derek Thompson. Based on the evidence in the room, my wife and Derek had an affair from last night until this morning. I saw them leave the Hampton about 15 minutes ago. They were holding hands and appeared intimate. I have photos to document this. I quickly looked into the bathroom but didn't see much else of significance. Before heading out, I decided to take a couple of items with me. Not that I'd be surprised by what DNA testing might reveal, but it might put Sarah on edge if she couldn't find them. As Beth and I entered the elevator, I started to lose control of myself. Tears rolled down my face. Beth, a well-meaning woman from North Carolina, put her hand on my shoulder and said, "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harrison." We stepped off the elevator into the lobby, and I started reaching for my wallet. "Don't even think about it, son," she said in a tone that left no room for argument. I smiled, thanked her, and said, "I know I shouldn't say this, but if you interact with them again, please don't give them the slightest hint that I was here." The corners of her mouth lifted in the hint of a smirk. She winked and said, "I've never seen you or heard of you in my entire life, and I'm insulted that you would suggest otherwise." Well, as you can see, my plan had come to an end. What to do next? I've already admitted I have no legal knowledge. However, even my limited understanding of divorce in the U.S. told me I could be in deep trouble if I filed for divorce too quickly, despite the prenup. That was the bad news. The good news was that I wasn't expected home until late Friday night. I had time to think and make a plan. Since I was on the south side of town, I drove another hour or so south to the small town of Monroe. I found myself at a local diner on Main Street. Monroe is a charming small town with some Civil War history, and there's even a small historical museum there. I know this because my father, who could recite every Civil War battle by heart, used to bring my brother and me here when we were kids. Sitting in a booth in the back, I noticed a quote from a John Wayne movie on the wall. In the movie The Shootist, Wayne played an aging gunfighter dying of cancer who was determined to go out with his boots on rather than let disease waste him away. I won't be wronged. I won't be insulted. I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I require the same from them. I'm not as much of a Duke fan as my dad was. I'm more of a Clint Eastwood from the Outlaw Josie Wales type, but I found myself chuckling. Damn right, Pilgrim, I said out loud, not addressing anyone in particular. The waitress who approached my table heard my Wayne impersonation. She just rolled her eyes and replied in her best Southern drawl, "Well, young man, would you like some breakfast?" I ordered coffee and a big breakfast. Such a simple thing as enjoying food made me feel better. While I sat and ate, I looked up and read several articles about spouses who cheat. According to the experts, this probably wasn't an isolated incident. There was no way they would be so comfortable if it was a drunken one-night stand. Statistically, in the US, women who cheat on their husbands rarely have just one experience. It had probably been going on for a while, but I had no proof. That was about to change. So I started making a list. There was no way I would stay married to a cheating spouse, even if it was relatively recent. I could forgive and maybe even keep some love in my heart, but all trust was lost forever. I would hire someone to help me get proof. Even with a prenup in place, I needed solid legal advice from someone who understood the financial side. I needed to get tested for STDs. Derek Thompson was bound to have picked up something somewhere. I had about 36 hours to get into action. I finished my breakfast and left the server a $50 tip for a $16 meal. At least one person in the Charlotte area would have a good day. Before leaving the diner, I texted Sarah, "Sorry, found my pen at the bottom of my briefcase." A moment later, she replied, "Lucky for you." In response, I typed 6 words I really wanted to send. "Screw you. Cheating." I didn't actually send that, but it was awfully tempting. I simply replied, "Aha." 2 hours later, I found myself in the office of Patterson, Sharp Associates. I had met Bob Patterson before at a charity event and knew he practiced family law. He returned my call and calmly listened to my story. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Harrison." "I appreciate that, Mr. Patterson. Please call me Michael." "Fine, Michael. I'm Robert, Bob to my friends and clients, so call me Bob." "Thank you, sir." "Michael, I'm not sugarcoating this. Legally, your situation isn't very favorable. The lack of children helps, but North Carolina's no-fault divorce laws mean you may have to go through counseling or mediation for the court to determine if the marriage is truly irretrievable. If the prenup was drafted properly, you may be able to avoid major financial loss, but that remains to be seen. I want to refer you to my partner, Patricia Sharp. She's the expert in our practice when it comes to divorce and will do the best job for you. Let me put you in touch with her assistant, Diana, and she'll set everything up. An hour later, I was already sitting in her office. I learned that Patricia Sharp lived up to her name. A petite woman, probably 5 feet 6 inches and 130 pounds. From what I gathered, she had been a competitive swimmer in college and still swam laps for an hour 6 times a week. After spending 10 minutes with her, anyone could tell she had spent her life proving that being small doesn't mean you can't win a fight. She brought the same attitude to her law practice. She listened carefully to everything I knew so far, asked a few clarifying questions, and then suggested some initial strategies. "Are they staying at the Hampton today?" "I don't know." "Don't worry, I can find out." She picked up the phone and said, "Diana, put me through to Pat and tell her I need to know if Sarah Harrison has booked room 319 at the Hampton Inn by Charlotte Airport for tonight. If so, tell Pat I need a full report by noon tomorrow, and tell her not to miss anything." "What?" "Yes, I know it'll annoy her, But that's part of the fun, isn't it? She returned the phone to its stand. Pat O'Connor is the best private investigator this side of Atlanta. She spent 18 years as a detective in Chicago before dropping everything and moving to Charlotte. The things she saw in the Windy City would curl your toes. Anyway, if they're there today, we'll know a lot of details by tomorrow. She agreed I should get tested for STDs but was concerned about how long it would take to get results. She assumed my wife would want to be intimate with me to cover her tracks. I assured her I knew a family doctor who might be able to expedite the tests. The usual 5 to 10 days could be cut down to 2 or 3. I called my buddy Dr. Stan Coleman and asked if I could stop by in the morning. Patricia also set me up with a forensic accountant from their practice. She handed me a printout of what I would need to bring, including our prenup. Finally, she said, "If your wife changes her plans and comes home tonight, you will not confront her. We will address everything once we know the facts and determine the best course of action. But that won't be until next week at the earliest. If my hunch is correct, it will probably take us a couple of weeks to establish a pattern of infidelity. It may not help us in court, but it certainly won't hurt us. Most Charlotte family court judges still disapprove of infidelity in marriage, so you should be on your best behavior. Be polite and courteous. Stay healthy. Pretend to be sick if she wants to be intimate anytime over the weekend. Other than that, it's business as usual." "So you're telling me that confronting her and punching little Derek with a baseball bat is off limits?" "Yeah, something like that. Seriously, can you do that? Anything stupid would sink us." "Yeah, you have my word." "That's enough." We shook hands and I left. I wish I could say I knew how to handle the pain in my life, but that would be a lie. I still had my clothes from the trip, so I didn't need to go inside. I went to another gym, paid for a day pass, and worked out for about 2 hours until I could barely stand. Then I took a long steam and shower before checking into the Hyatt Hotel downtown, where I immediately ordered room service. My order included a bottle of Maker's Mark. After my second drink, I turned off my phone and put it away in the closet, knowing that once I got drunk, I would forget where it was. I didn't want to risk calling my wife while intoxicated. Tears, anger, frustration, and more tears all lasted until I passed out. The next morning, I woke up around 7 with the worst hangover I could remember since college. Forcing myself back to the gym, I took a long steamy shower while sipping from my water bottle, which was filled with ice and a little more Makers. Whoever came up with the solution "hair of the dog that bit you" must have known something, because after my shower, I felt almost human again. I spent an hour at the local Starbucks with my laptop, compiling a financial report for the accountant. By 8:30, I was in Coleman's office. I explained the situation to him, and he drew my blood himself. "I'll personally take this to the lab and have them return the results to me. I'll have to put your name on them, but doctor-patient confidentiality will keep them private until you need them in court." "Not your first rodeo, Doc?" "Hell no, buddy," he replied in his best John Wayne voice. Seemed like everyone here loved the Duke. "I may have the results by the end of today, but it could be Monday. I can't put that much pressure on the lab staff." "No worries. Thanks, Stan." Back at Patterson Sharp, I sat down with Louise Montgomery, the forensic accountant. She went through everything, kicked all the tires, and looked under the hood of my financial life for the better part of 2 hours. It was about as enjoyable as a root canal. When we were done, she took a deep breath and began to summarize. "Well, Mr. Harrison, there's good news and bad news. The prenup covers about 80% of your assets in the event of divorce due to adultery, but I don't see you getting anything better than 50-50 on the house. You can also avoid paying alimony, and obviously you won't receive any, but you may have to split retirement and savings accounts. I'll prepare a full report and have it to Patricia by the end of the day." I thanked her and headed upstairs to meet Patricia Sharp again. She was sitting and chatting with a woman who looked to be in her late 40s. Pat O'Connor was a pleasant-looking woman with short brown hair, deep brown eyes, and a friendly smile. Her handshake was firm, and her gaze was penetrating. I felt like I would have to give an honest answer to any of her questions, so commanding was her presence. Pat's jacket was hanging on the back of a chair, and I noticed what appeared to be a service weapon on her belt. Note to self, I thought, Never mess with that woman. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, North Carolinians, remember, are always friendly. She cut to the chase. Mr. Harrison, your wife is definitely in a relationship with student-teacher Derek Thompson. Thanks to a very nice woman named Beth, I was able to install surveillance equipment in their room at the Hampton Inn. She paused and looked up from her notes. By the way, Beth asked me to mention that she has a lovely niece in Concord if you're interested in that in the future. I blushed slightly at the thought. I converted some of the video into photographs and enhanced the images to make your wife's identity unequivocally clear. They returned to the hotel around 1 p.m. yesterday afternoon and stayed until 6 p.m. when they went out for dinner. They ate at a Chinese restaurant in South Charlotte and returned to the Hampton around 8 p.m. According to my contact in the lobby, they checked out around 10 p.m. Thompson got into his car and she got into hers. Mrs. Harrison went home and is still there. She handed me a large file folder across the table. There are photographs and a thumb drive with video. I don't advise you to look at these ever, but if you do, give yourself some time and space to deal with what you'll see and hear. I am truly sorry, Mr. Harrison. I hate cheaters for what they are and the damage they do. I did a little checking on you as well, and it became clear to me that you don't deserve the way your wife is betraying you. She and Sharp exchanged a few more remarks and ideas on how to proceed over the next few weeks to establish a pattern. Then she got up, threw on her jacket, shook my hand, wished me well, and walked out the door. Sharp went to her cabinet and poured me a shot of some premium bourbon to calm my nerves. I tossed it back in one gulp and prepared for our conversation to continue. We discussed several aspects of the situation. I brought her up to speed on my blood tests, and we discussed the financial aspects of the impending divorce. What is your ultimate goal, Michael? I mean, what's most important to you when the dust settles? I thought for a moment. I want out as soon as possible. I can be patient and not do anything stupid, but just the thought of being around her makes me nauseous. I really want you to do everything you can to make sure the terms of the prenup are honored. I can live with splitting the house and other smaller assets, but there is no way I want her to come out of this in a strong financial position at my expense. Furthermore, I would like to salvage what's left of my dignity. I want it to be known that it was she who was unfaithful, not me. No irreconcilable differences. I don't want to go after the school district, as I work there too, and frankly, I don't see any fault on the part of Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. However, I do want it to be known that she and I broke up because she was having an affair with Derek Thompson behind my back. Finally, I want to hurt Thompson. I don't know if you can convince the district that it's in their best interest to remove him from their program, but I really want him driving a delivery truck in some small town for the rest of his days. Sharp replied to each point. First, I think you're okay with the prenup. I'm cautiously optimistic. Second, we will make sure that the news of the reason for the breakup reaches everyone. However, that does not preclude the court from ordering counseling to see if the marriage can be saved. Assuming your wife has no interest in divorce, I would be amazed if her attorney doesn't push for it. They are likely to behave aggressively, if for no other reason than to drag out the case in hopes they can wear you down and get you to change your mind. Finally, you should temper your hopes that Thompson's career will suffer. You're right, the district can cut its losses, especially if student teachers sign some sort of code of conduct regarding behavior during training. However, I wouldn't get my hopes up on that. Michael, you're going to have to go home in the next day or so. You might be able to come up with an excuse to stay away for most of the weekend, but you have to go back soon and play the loving husband like your life depends on it. One hint of what you know, and we run the risk of her going on the offensive before we're fully prepared. I take you at your word that you will not go near Thompson under any circumstances. If you think you'll crack, I'll call Pat and ask her to put one of her people on you for protection. I assured the attorney I would behave accordingly, even if I had to bite my tongue until it bled. It was Friday early afternoon when I left Sharp's office. I sat in my car for 30 minutes trying to figure out how to drive home without losing my composure. I couldn't see any way to succeed, so I did the next best thing I could think of. I pulled onto southbound I-77 again, heading toward Columbia. Sarah was expecting me home around 7. After driving about 2 hours, I pulled into the small town of Chester South Carolina, and found the local tire shop. Behind the counter was a 40-something guy wearing a shirt with the name Eddie embroidered on it. He looked content reading his Sports Illustrated and was in no mood to be bothered with work late on a Friday afternoon. "Can I help you?" he asked without much enthusiasm. "Yeah, I need for new tires." Eddie took a deep breath of frustration. Apparently, the Panthers' draft prospects for next season were more appealing than making money. He stood up and walked out to my car. "These tires have at least 10,000 more miles on them. You don't need new ones." He looked annoyed. He had no idea what real annoyance looked like. "Look, Eddie, I'm a little particular about my car, and I don't care about the price. Can you put new tires on it or not?" He muttered to himself as he walked back inside and fired up his ancient computer. "Not today, but I can have them in by 10 a.m. tomorrow morning." He then pulled out a small calculator. "With shipping, installation, and taxes, it'll cost you $1,455. "Great," I said. "Do it." He looked at me like I had 3 heads but still typed up the order. "Okay, all done. See you in the morning." Without waiting for a response, he went back to his SI article. I pulled back onto the highway and checked into the Hampton Inn for $89 a night. I flopped down on the reasonably comfortable bed and called Sarah. "You're almost home, babe. I can't wait to see you." She sounded pretty chipper after 2 days of fun with Derek. "Sorry, Sarah." I lied, somehow keeping my composure. "I just blew 2 tires hitting some debris that fell off a truck on the highway. I'm stuck in a little South Carolina town called Chester. They can put new tires on tomorrow, but not until morning. I won't be home until mid-afternoon tomorrow. Unless you want to invite Derek over tonight and sleep with him in our bed." I didn't say that last sentence out loud, but I really wanted to. "Damn, Mike, are you okay? Nothing hit the windshield or anything?" "No, I'm fine, but I'm having fast food for dinner tonight and breakfast tomorrow morning." "Sorry for the delay, Sarah." "Me too, but the important thing is that you're safe. I miss you terribly and was hoping to jump your bones tonight. I think I can wait until tomorrow. Please be careful for the rest of the trip and get home to your loving wife as soon as possible." "I will, Sarah. I'm sorry, but I'm a little tired and still a bit shaken from the blowout. I'm gonna drink these 2 beers I bought at the convenience store and go to bed. See you tomorrow." "Okay, Mike. I love you. Good night." I knew that at some point I would have to lie more convincingly and respond to "I love you" with sincerity in my voice, but it wouldn't be tonight. I had no way of knowing if she picked up on my lack of response, but at that moment I didn't care. I walked over to the desk and opened the envelope Pat had given me. It contained photographs that confirmed my wife's betrayal. After looking through them and feeling sick to my stomach, I went back and inserted the flash drive into my laptop. What I saw broke my heart completely. Yes, I was devastated. She was selfish and disrespectful. Those words couldn't begin to describe what I had witnessed. My anger at Derek would surely grow, but at the moment, I was filled with white-hot rage at the woman who I thought loved me and had committed to being my faithful wife. In the 8 years of our marriage and the year before that when we were engaged, I had never seriously considered being with another woman. I don't mean to say I never looked or had a fleeting thought when I saw a beautiful woman. I am a man just like everyone else. However, it never occurred to me to disregard the vows I made to my wife or to hurt her with adultery. I began to remember how the prenup had bothered her. She was offended that I had even suggested she couldn't be trusted. I now realized she was a narcissist, concerned only with herself and her pleasure. She didn't seem to understand the kind of commitment I thought love required. So yes, this revelation broke my heart, but I was also furious. There was no way this was going to go unanswered. The next couple of weeks were going to be tough. But screw her. Now I would play my part, all with the intention of getting away from her as soon as possible. And Derek, her big stud, would pay too. The next morning, I had a couple of fast food breakfast sandwiches. I wasn't lying about being stuck with limited food options. 2 cups of coffee helped wash away the taste as I headed out to meet my new friend Eddie and pick up for new tires. In the morning, Eddie was less grumpy. He smiled when I walked in. I guess he realized he could sell my old tires for a few $100 cash and pocket it without the IRS finding out. On the wall hung a couple of deer heads and a picture of him kneeling next to a large buck with a compound bow across his lap. Maybe he'd used the money to buy himself new hunting equipment for next season. I don't know why, but the thought made me feel a little better. By 11 a.m., I had 4 new tires and was out of excuses to avoid heading home. During the ride, I started thinking about how I could mess with Sarah's head. The thought of being intimate with her made me cringe. Before heading home, I made one stop near Charlotte. I pulled up to the house around 1:30 p.m. Sarah's car was in its usual spot. I walked in the front door and heard Alexa playing some light jazz. It sounded like a contemporary artist's chill album. I rounded the corner and walked into the kitchen, where Sarah, swaying to the beat of the music, was washing dishes. She must not have heard me come in. I grabbed her from behind. "Damn, Mike, you scared the hell out of me. Let me go, you jerk." She twisted away. I just banged my neck on the cabinet. Maybe it'll be Derek's turn to be jealous. Surprises and novelty, yes. Neanderthal behavior, no. What the hell, Mike? I bet you left a mark on my neck, and I'll be embarrassed at school on Monday. That's not what I meant, Mike. It's just that you scared me. I guess I overreacted. I'm so glad you're home. Come on, let's go upstairs. I instantly let her go, turned around, picked up my bag, and headed upstairs. Just forget it, Sarah. Maybe you can tell your colleagues that your inconsiderate husband got carried away and rudely surprised you. I had never spoken to Sarah like that before, and since I was walking away with my back to her and not waiting for a response, I couldn't see the look on her face. All she said was, "Whatever you say." I unpacked my bag, took a quick shower, changed into weekend clothes, and headed downstairs. When I got there, Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table texting. She put her phone face down on the table and looked up at me. There was no forgiveness in her eyes, but the anger had dissipated. I had a pretty good guess who she was texting. "Mike, leave it alone." "Sarah, I've been gone for almost a week. 2 days more than I intended. All I could think about was getting back to you, but apparently my coming home and trying to be affectionate didn't meet with your approval. You were the one who told me to hurry home so you could jump my bones. I apologize for not understanding how that was supposed to happen. Enjoy the rest of your day and evening. I'm leaving." I didn't give her time to respond, but I'm sure she was stunned. Even when we argued, I never lashed out or spoke in harsh tones. We disagreed, of course, but for the most part, it was measured and respectful. I just walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. I went to the clubhouse, changed into golf clothes, and hit a couple of buckets of balls. After that, I worked on my putting. I sadly thought that, with the advent of bachelorhood, I would have serious time to shave a couple of strokes off my game. Unfortunately, given the circumstances, that didn't do much to improve my mood. A couple of hours later, I settled into the men's grill, grabbed a beer, and chatted about this and that with a handful of fellow golfers. One of them was Jim Reynolds, a retired school principal who was a good friend of mine. While we were talking, I learned that his wife Carol was out of town for the weekend visiting her sister in Asheville, so I invited him over for dinner. We went to the tavern on the track downtown just as it opened at 4 p.m. We had a couple of glasses of bourbon and sampled their excellent burgers. They were showing the Braves and Mets game on the big screen. With all my stress and turmoil, eating a burger and discussing baseball with a friend made me feel like I had a small piece of normalcy back, and for that I was grateful. We left around 7 p.m., and I checked my cell phone. There were 6 text messages from Sarah, about 30 minutes apart, starting about an hour after I left. "Mike, I'm so sorry. Please come home so we can talk." "Mike, where are you? Come home. Stop ignoring me." "Mike, I know you're seeing these messages. Come home now." "What, Mike? Okay. But don't say I didn't ask you to come home. I'm not the one acting like a stubborn child." I thought to myself, you're just the lying, cheating wife. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I went to the local movie theater and saw a new thriller called Firestarter about a girl who discovered she could start fires with her mind. I wished I could find her and introduce her to Derek. The movie ended just before 10 p.m., and I headed home. As I pulled up to the house, I saw that Sarah's car was gone. I can't say I was disappointed, but I also realized she was probably being comforted by her lover. I went back to the club and had a couple of drinks, then got home around 11:30 p.m. Sarah was back. She was sitting in our bed. "Mike, I can't believe you left and didn't answer my texts. Where did you disappear to?" Her tone was firm, indicating she considered herself the offended party. "Well, let's see. Country club, dinner with Jim Reynolds, movie, home, back to the club since you weren't here, then back again. And you?" She lowered her eyes for a moment, not meeting my gaze. "Nowhere in particular. Have you been with anyone?" "Not really. Met a friend at grounds for Thought Coffee Shop." "With who? Does it matter? We need to talk about what happened earlier." "Okay, talk." "Mike, I'm sorry I reacted the way I did, but your aggressiveness scared me, and I was confused. You threw me off balance and made me defensive. You're grabbing and—" She paused. "Touching didn't feel romantic. Part of my love for you is based on how much you respect me, and your actions didn't feel like love and respect." "Sarah, I admit my actions were different, but the fact that you asked me to spice things up a while ago seemed to indicate you wanted to bring something new to our physical relationship, something more passionate. If that's not it, then explain it to me so I can understand where you're going with this." "That's what I said, but I was thinking more romantic. A candlelit dinner or a weekend at the beach with lots of tender moments." "I'm sorry, Sarah, but we've done all of those things many times over the last 8 years. Weekend getaways, long walks holding hands, romantic conversations by the fireplace. I don't believe what you're saying adds up." "It's true, but maybe in new places." "Nonsense, Sarah. I remember our conversation very well, and you can't rewrite history. If you've changed your mind, say so, but you don't have to lie and pretend you weren't suggesting I be more passionate physically." "Mike, why are you acting like this? You're so literal and inflexible." "I may have said it, but how can you interpret it as grab me from behind or leave a mark on my neck for everyone to see?" "Sarah, do you remember what you were wearing when we had that conversation?" "What? No. Why does it matter?" "It's important because it's relevant to our discussion. I was working in the yard, had just showered, and came out of the bedroom. I've never seen you dress like that before. I'm pretty sure we didn't come up for air for at least the next hour. So how do I go from that to a romantic weekend at the beach holding hands?" "I'll tell you what. Pick 10 husbands of your choice, tell them this story, and ask them how they would interpret your invitation. If at least 9 of them don't say something similar to what I did today, I'll buy you any new car you want." "That's just ridiculous, Mike." "No, not only is it not ridiculous, it's absolutely accurate. When you dress provocatively for your husband and ask him to spice things up, it's not because you're in the mood for gentle romance. You're trying to rewrite what happened to make yourself right and me wrong. Mike, your stubbornness is getting us nowhere. Why don't we just let it go? And you come to bed and just hold me?" "Sorry, Sarah, that won't work. If you don't like that kind of behavior from me, fine. I won't try again. But you don't have to act clueless and insist it's my fault. You care more about people seeing that I gave you a hickey than you do about my feelings or our relationship. I'm not interested in pretending, so you can assume I've admitted I was wrong. Good night, Sarah." With those words, I turned and headed for the guest bedroom. "Come back. I'm not done talking to you, damn it." I ignored her, assuming my first attempt at psychological warfare had been successful. I'd managed to avoid intimacy without giving myself away. I seriously doubted she was putting 2 and 2 together and getting 4. She was too self-absorbed to even consider the possibility that I knew she was cheating on me. There had been chilly periods in our marriage before, but on Sunday we were in full-blown Cold War mode. We avoided each other. We didn't talk. I spent most of the morning at the club and the afternoon working in the yard. I went to bed before she did, and when she came into the bedroom, I was already lying down. "I'm not sleeping in the same bed with you until you apologize, Mike." "I don't mind, Sarah. I'm not the unreasonable type, so I think we should alternate nights in the master bedroom. It's my bed as much as yours, so I'll sleep here tonight. If you don't like it, you know where the spare room is. Tomorrow night I'll sleep there, and you can be here." "I don't agree to that. Go sleep in the guest room until you come to your senses." Sarah, I have no idea why you think you have the final word on everything, but you don't. We are equals and I treat us as such. I'm going to sleep in this bed tonight, and what you do is up to you. Bastard, she hissed as she left for the guest room. The beginning of the week went the same way. We barely spoke to each other. She kept trying to push my buttons, but I refused to engage. Monday night she told me how she had been humiliated at school when her colleagues teased her about the mark on her neck. I shrugged, showing I didn't care. Tuesday morning, Stan Coleman called and asked me to stop by his office. First, the bad news. You have a mild case of chlamydia. You probably haven't experienced any symptoms. More than half of men who contract the disease don't. The good news is that with treatment, the infection will clear up quickly, although you'll need to be rechecked in about 3 months. Maybe I should ask if you know how you contracted it. Of course, Stan. I contracted it from my wife. I trust our doctor-patient confidentiality is respected here. I've never been with another woman since the year before Sarah and I got engaged. Last Thursday, I found out she was having an affair with another man. I can only assume she contracted it from him, unless she's had other partners I don't know about. He heard the sadness in my voice. Well, I'm sorry as hell to hear that, Michael. I always thought you had a good marriage. I'll put you on a standard course of antibiotics and like I said, it should clear up without problems. You'll need to tell Sarah about it and abstain from intimate contact for the next few weeks, just to be safe. No problem, Stan. But I'm going through a difficult situation here, and I'll need to talk to my attorney about sharing this information with my wife. How serious is the infection? It doesn't kill, but if left untreated, it can cause serious health problems, including potentially affecting a woman's ability to have children. Depending on when Sarah contracted the infection, she's at risk. A couple of weeks isn't a problem, but the longer it goes untreated, the higher the risk. Besides, Mike, as much pain as you're in, you don't want to live with the responsibility of possibly jeopardizing someone else's health. You're right, Stan. I can't live with myself if I sink to that level just because I'm hurting. But let me ask you this. I haven't noticed any symptoms in her. So is it safe to say it's still early and she doesn't know she's contracted it yet? Maybe, maybe not. Some women never experience symptoms, but that doesn't mean the disease can't do serious damage. I can't tell you what to do legally, but I will say that waiting more than 48 hours would be morally wrong. We shook hands, and he said he would send the prescription to a pharmacy across town that I didn't usually frequent. I appreciated his concern for my privacy. An hour later, I was in Patricia Sharp's office, explaining everything to my attorney. She chuckled at my psychological warfare strategy but warned me not to be so obvious as to give myself away. She became much more serious when she heard about the STD. Well, that changes things, she said with a sigh. I know we lawyers have a reputation, but even I can't ethically keep someone in the dark when there are serious health risks involved. It was my turn to laugh at her self-deprecating lawyer joke. Since the doctor gave you 48 hours, you'd better act within 24. Let me consult with a couple of colleagues I respect, and I expect you here tomorrow morning at 8 sharp. Sarah didn't get home until about 10 p.m. that evening. Her shift ended at 3:30 p.m. If she expected me to demand to know where she'd been, she was in for a disappointment. I was watching an episode of Ted Lasso when she walked in. She looked into the den for a moment, sighed, and headed upstairs without saying a word. Under any other circumstances, she would have sat next to me and shared some popcorn, and I would have poured her a glass of white wine. The thought that this would never happen again for the rest of our marriage caused me to feel an overwhelming sense of loss. I was betrayed, and I wasn't going to stay with the person who betrayed me, but I loved her. A part of me still did, and that part grieved for what was gone forever. The next morning, I was sitting in the conference room of Patterson, Sharp Associates. Patricia was present, along with Pat O'Connor and one of the other attorneys, Mark Sawyer. We don't like the timing, Michael, but it's time to take action. Everyone agrees that the STD situation changed the picture. Have you thought about how you want to tell her? Yes, I have. One of my goals is to keep her off balance until she's served papers. What if you guys witness the fact that I'm notifying her? But for now, she won't know the source of the information. Everyone at the table looked at each other skeptically but remained silent, waiting for me to continue. What if I send her gynecologist an anonymous message that one of her patients, Sarah Harrison, has chlamydia? Wouldn't she be obligated under the Hippocratic Oath to inform her patient? Later, you could confirm that was me. Pat could testify that I wrote the message and confirm the date and time. I would be acting in good faith since my doctor required me to notify her within 48 hours, and I did it in less than 30. It may be underhanded, but she'll have the opportunity to get the medical attention she needs. Wouldn't that pass the ethical test in court? There was a pause. Pat and Mark waited for Patricia to think it over. After a few minutes, she spoke. Not perfect, not even good, but not terrible either. It will make you look petty but not negligent or criminal. Under the right circumstances and with the right judge, it could be fine. However, it's also incomplete. Any judge will want to know who knew of your actions and what steps they took to dissuade you. So, Michael, I'll tell you right now, I don't think you should do it and it's a bad idea. Neither do I, Pat said. I agree with Patricia, Mark added, grinning. You shouldn't be doing this. On top of that, Patricia snapped back. Eventually she'll put 2 and 2 together and realize that if it wasn't Derek, it must have been you. She'll figure out that you know about her affair. Yeah, but it'll take a day or two, so I can get ready to face her. Thank you all for the advice. However, I am determined to do this. When I leave here, I will make that call to Dr. Pamela Connor. In that case, I want to be a witness, Pat replied. I don't want to be told later that I just assumed you would do everything but never verified that it happened. We discussed a few more details, after which I left. 40 minutes later, Dr. Connor received a strange call from an unknown number. On the other end, it turned out was Private Investigator Pat O'Connor. Dr. Connor, I have chosen to remain anonymous, but I am aware that one of your patients, Mrs. Sarah Harrison, has a sexually transmitted infection, chlamydia. Now that you have this information, I trust you will immediately act as her attending physician and provide assistance to your patient. Thank you. Finished with the call, I destroyed the burner phone and later that afternoon, on my way home, threw it into a pond about 5 miles from our house. There was no one nearby to witness my complete disregard for North Carolina's littering laws. About the time I was discarding the phone, Pat was parking outside Dr. Connor's office when a black Honda Accord pulled into one of the parking spaces. Sarah got out looking a little disheveled and entered the office. 45 minutes later, she came out looking even worse. Pat followed her to the local CVS pharmacy, where she picked up a small prescription bag. Shortly thereafter, Sarah returned home. I sat on the porch and watched coverage of the Braves' 10-0 victory over the Marlins. Since we still weren't talking much, she didn't say hello and just headed upstairs. About half an hour later, she came out onto the porch, freshly showered, and abruptly sat down next to me, letting out a deep sigh. Mike, why don't we call a truce and go back to normal? I don't know, Sarah. How do you propose we declare a truce? How about we just end this argument and leave it at that? I'm not sure that works for me, Sarah. Why not, Mike? She looked like she genuinely wanted to know. Perhaps the revelation about her STD had jolted her a little. I'm happy to forgive and move on, Sarah. I've apologized several times for misinterpreting your spice-it-up comments, but as far as I know, you still don't think you've done anything you need to apologize for. Your refusal to do so seems to imply that you win and I lose. I'm not trying to come out on top, Sarah, but I think we're equally at fault for the last few days, and you don't see it that way. Fine, she replied with slight irritation in her voice. I'm really sorry about that. So is everything okay now? No, Sarah, it's not okay. I've known you for almost 10 years, and I know when you're not saying what you think. Your words may be right, but your tone shows that your heart hasn't changed. Tell me I'm wrong. Sarah, explain where I'm wrong, and we can move on. She looked at me for a brief moment with sadness in her eyes. I thought maybe she was going to tell me about the whole affair. I didn't expect a sincere apology given what I'd heard on the recordings. But maybe I was wrong about her. Would I be able to forgive her and work on our marriage? Honestly, the thought scared the hell out of me. But I shouldn't have worried. Her eyes gave her away as she returned to her righteous indignation. She was still blaming me. At that moment, I realized without a shadow of a doubt that it was over between us. "You're just so stubborn, Michael Adam Harrison," I apologized, "and you threw it back in my face because it wasn't up to your standards. Okay, you're the one who led us down this dead end, and it's your fault if we don't find a way to work this out." "Sarah Elizabeth Abbott," she said, deliberately using her maiden name. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I can see in your eyes and hear in your tone that you may be using the right words. But in your heart, you believe you are innocent and I am guilty. You are convinced I am proud and unreasonable. So I'm offering you a deal. If you can find even one of our close friends who truly believes I am an arrogant jerk who never apologizes or admits when he's wrong, I will accept your conclusion." She rose to her feet, glaring at me, and stomped off the porch and into the house. I took a deep breath. It had been almost a week since I discovered her blatant disregard for her marriage vows. The next 2 weeks would be nearly impossible. It was time to look for options. The next morning, I was in my boss's office. Connie Silverton was a fair but tough administrator. You don't become the superintendent of a major school district without being both. It was hard to do, but I laid out my situation to her. I needed advice to help me get through the next 14 or so days until I could serve Sarah with divorce papers. Connie's response was professional but caring. "First of all, Michael, I'm very sorry about your situation. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old, and it was horrible. However, before we get started, I need to know that you'll weather this storm and continue your excellent work for me and the district. I can't have this blow up and affect your performance." "Connie, I can't say I'll be completely fine for the next couple of weeks, but I truly love my job and the people I work with. I look forward to continuing to help you and the district in the future. I'm deeply hurt, but I'm not dead, and I have no intention of giving up my career for the woman who betrayed me. If I can manage to keep it together, I promise you I'll be here 100%. I think I know you pretty well, Michael, and I trust you to be honest with me. There's a conference for school district financial officers next week in Washington, D.C. In the past, I've declined your requests to attend because of the cost. However, this year I think it would be in the district's best interest for you to go. It will begin Monday and end Thursday afternoon. As I recall, you have family on the East Coast, so why don't I approve your participation, and then you can stay the weekend with your family? That part you'll have to pay for yourself." "Deal, boss. I'd give you a hug, but I know you'd probably report me to HR, and I don't want your husband Bob to take my gratitude the wrong way." Bob was her husband, a retired school principal. "Know this. I'll never forget your kindness, and you'll never regret helping me." She smiled as warmly as I'd ever seen her smile. "I'll do the paperwork today, Michael. If you survive next Sunday, I'll buy you dinner. Now get out of here and think about how we're going to finalize this new contract with the teachers' union. Their reps are negotiating hard." I stood up and smiled. "Consider it done, boss. By the way, if I can save 5% on this contract, can we talk about my year-end bonus?" Her expression became serious again, which told me it was time to leave. I only had to make it 3 days before I had to leave for the conference. With any luck, I would only have to live in this charade for 2 or 3 days after I returned. I managed to focus on the rest of the day and do good work, even frustrating Janet Meyer, the teachers' union representative, when I informed her that their latest offer was unrealistic. Let her stew over the weekend and next week, I thought to myself. Maybe she'll be a little more flexible when her members find out she doesn't have a contract and isn't even close to one. On the way home, I called my father and brother to let them know I'd be in the area the coming weekend and would love to spend time with them. I apologized for the short notice, but both promised to make time to get together. I didn't feel like sharing the bad news with them yet, but on the other hand, I knew they would be supportive when they heard the whole story. My last call before heading home was to attorney Patricia Sharp. I quickly brought her up to speed, and she informed me this was the perfect opportunity to get 1 or 2 of Pat's people to tail Sarah to get more evidence of her infidelity. When I arrived, Sarah was not at home, which under normal circumstances would be unusual. However, nothing had been normal in my life for over a week. It was the second day of her 3-day weekend, so we should have had something planned by now. At this point, she could have been with Derek or some other guy for all I knew. That's when I first realized she could have had other men. Now wouldn't that be something? I thought to myself. What if she's running around on Derek behind his back? Maybe I should send him an anonymous message urging him to keep an eye on his cheating girlfriend so he doesn't become her next victim. I decided to go for a run. I had done a little cross-country running in high school, though I was never great at it. However, running 3 to 5 miles a couple of times a week helped me clear my head. My route was mostly to and from the golf course. A couple of good hills on the way there and back gave the run a nice cardiovascular element. Today I ran more intensely, trying to exhaust myself so I could possibly sleep that night. My world was crumbling around me, and since I had gone into survival mode, I rarely allowed myself to slow down enough to assess my reality. It was good to run and think. What depressed me most was Sarah's betrayal. 9 days ago, I'd been in love with a woman who I thought loved me just as much or more. Discovering that her vows didn't mean a damn thing to her shook me to the core. How much of this was my fault? I wondered, climbing the first hill. No problem in a marriage lies entirely with one person. Perhaps I was too busy or preoccupied with my career, not giving her enough time and attention. Other questions swirled through my mind as I continued my route. How would she react when served? Would she ever admit to what she had done? Would she make excuses or ask for forgiveness? I knew I wouldn't stay in the marriage after such a deep betrayal, but how would I feel about her when I saw her around the district? Would I become bitter seeing her with other men? Would she stay in Charlotte? Or would she leave town? I couldn't imagine her leaving as if defeated. She'd be too stubborn for that. No, I assumed she would stay and try to prove to everyone that I had been a complete fool to divorce her. It dawned on me that if I was thinking so much, then I wasn't running hard enough. By the top of the second hill, I was no longer preoccupied with thoughts of my soon-to-be ex-wife. I was just looking for little things like oxygen. When I got home, I was completely exhausted, which was exactly the purpose of the run. I walked up and down the street for about 20 minutes, cooling down, then hopped in the shower. Then I put on my swim trunks, grabbed a beer, and headed for the hot tub. My calf muscles were letting me know they hadn't appreciated the last hour or so. Sarah was still nowhere to be seen. Later, around 11 p.m., I heated up some leftovers, watched 2 episodes of Ted Lasso, and finally crawled into bed. Sarah never showed up, wrote, or called. I did her the courtesy of leaving her alone. It was the only time in our entire marriage that we had been separated for more than 12 hours without contacting each other or knowing where the other was. I took 2 melatonin tablets, and for ibuprofen, my leg muscles were giving me no peace with their complaints. I slept until 7 the next morning. Before I went downstairs, I noticed Sarah's door was closed. Apparently, she had come home during the night. I listened for a moment, nothing stirred. I drank my coffee and ate a couple of bagels, showered, changed clothes, and headed out to the golf course. The weather in Charlotte in late March can be amazing, and today was no exception. I hit a few buckets of balls on the driving range and joined a couple of buddies for an 18-hole round, then lunch. By 3 p.m., I had run out of excuses to stay away and headed home. I didn't text or call Sarah all day, and she ignored me too. I guess we were both waiting to see who would blink first. When I got there, she wasn't home, and I started repeating what had happened the night before. Sunday morning was the same, but I was heading out of town on the 4 p.m. Southwest flight to Reagan National. I spent most of the morning cutting grass and working in the flower beds, something Sarah and I usually did together. When she finally showed up around 11 a.m., she just looked at me through the kitchen window and went back inside. Screw this, I thought as I gathered my tools. If she wants to stay on the sidelines and sulk, then let her. But there was no way in hell I was going to let her control the situation. I left for the airport without leaving her a note or message to let her know where I was going or how long I would be gone. I figured she probably wouldn't even notice I'd been gone all week. Actually, I hoped she would notice, and I hoped she'd bring Derek over and sleep with him in our bed so I could add that to her list of betrayals. On Tuesday, 2 things happened. First, I got a call from Patricia telling me that Pat's associates already had some new photos and videos of Sarah and Derek. No doubt they were still carrying on their affair. The second incident surprised me. Sarah finally texted me. The message exchange was not pleasant. Where are you? In Washington. What? I'm at a conference for district financial officers that Connie asked me to attend. When were you going to tell me, you inconsiderate bastard? Whenever you got home before 1 or 2 in the morning and actually talked to your husband who'd been waiting for you since 6 p.m. both Friday and Saturday. Where were you every night? She ignored the question. Mike, I was scared to death that something had happened to you. I can't believe you did that to me. Why didn't you just text me? I wrote and you didn't write back. Sarah, number 1. If you texted me and I didn't respond, did you call the police? What? When you were scared to death that something had happened to me, did you call the police? Oh well, no. I guess I didn't think of that, but still, you're such an ass for not communicating with me. What about my boss or my dad or my brother or any of our friends? Who have you been contacting, trying to track me down to make sure I'm okay? I've contacted several people. Don't try to blame this on me, Mike. Sarah, number 2, name them. What? Name who you texted or called so I can verify. I will not tolerate insults from an insensitive and uncaring jerk like you. Well, Sarah, you may think I'm an insensitive and uncaring jerk, but I'm not a liar like you. If you were really concerned about my well-being, you would have texted me, and we both know you didn't. Second, you would have reached out to some of our friends, coworkers, or family members, which we know you didn't. What we don't know is where you were Friday or Saturday night. Care to elaborate on your whereabouts? Maybe you have something to confess to me, dear wife? You're just insanely stubborn, Mike. And right now you're just pissing me off. Well, Sarah, you don't seem to be capable of telling the truth or taking responsibility for what you've done or are doing. So one more thing, screw you. There was no response after that, just radio silence. Was she beginning to suspect I knew something? Did she feel any guilt for her treacherous behavior? Did she even consider her infidelity wrong? I realized I was breathing hard and sweating like I'd been working out for an hour. I pulled myself together, showered, and headed to the conference. The rest of the week went okay, considering my marriage was over and I was an emotional wreck. I managed to make some good professional connections and attend a couple of informative panels. The weekend with my dad and brother went well but was difficult. Both tried to be understanding, but neither had shared my experience. My mom passed away about 3 years ago at age 63 from a rare form of cancer. She died holding the hand of the man who had loved and cherished her for 41 years. My dad could understand my sadness but not the pain of Sarah's duplicity. He thought she was crazy. My brother Elliot had been married for 11 years to an amazing woman named Mary. Everything seemed to be going well for them and their 3 children. Even when they hit bumps in the road, Mary and Elliot still looked at each other with adoration and resolved their infrequent arguments quickly and without much anger. My brother seemed to be on the same marital path as my father. I was happy for him. We played a couple of rounds of golf, took in a Nationals game, and had a great dinner. I enjoyed spending time with my nephews. Sunday night came all too quickly. When I hugged my dad goodbye at Reagan, he took my face in his hands, looking sternly into my eyes. I know it hurts like hell, son, but you'll get through this. Sarah has proven to be selfish and destructive, but you don't give up. Keep moving forward one day at a time. I know it's true. The pain will subside. With those words, he gave me a hug, jumped into his Ford F-150, and drove back to Springfield, Virginia. By the time I arrived at Charlotte Douglas, it was almost noon. I headed into the office to catch up on some details and to see if Janet Meyer had started to come around in our negotiations. During my week of absence, the good news was that her latest offer was much closer to reasonable than the previous one. The gap was still there, but it was clear the teachers didn't want a prolonged standoff and knew the district would behave reasonably at the bargaining table. Before leaving, I glanced into Connie's office. She looked up and gave me her usual expression. What are you going to waste my time with? I paused for a moment and smiled. Well, hey boss, just wanted to say thanks again for last week. It was a good conference, well worth the investment, and the time spent with my family was just what the doctor ordered. As if I care, Michael. Have you had time to do anything useful since you got back? Not much. Just went over the teacher's latest offer and thought I'd let you know that by the end of this week, we'll have a deal we're both happy with. No need to thank me. Get the hell out of my office, Michael. And come back when you actually have something for me. I always liked that teasing, but today it seemed more important than usual. Before I turned to leave, I stopped. Hey, boss. Connie looked up. What? I love you too. I jumped out the door before the stapler she was holding could find its target. Sometimes normal interactions with people you love and respect were the best medicine in the world. Maybe Dad was right. Maybe the pain would begin to subside. On the way home, I called my lawyer to see how our case was progressing. Within a minute, Patricia Sharp was on the phone. Stop by my office at 7 tomorrow morning on your way to work, Michael. I think we're ready to pull the trigger. As sad as it is to admit, Sarah kept meeting with her student-teacher boyfriend over the weekend. I won't reveal the details, although we do have some very clear photos of her in what appears to be a compromising situation at their usual hotel. When I arrived home, the house was dark, quiet, and empty. Felt like it was over between Sarah and me. We had hardly seen each other for the past 3 weeks, and we hadn't had a normal conversation since I had left for the conference in Raleigh over 3 weeks ago. I realized how much I missed her. Not the person she'd turned into, but the Sarah I'd married. Fun, curious, mischievous, beautiful, and strong-willed. She was the person I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. I dropped my bag in the laundry room, grabbed a beer, and settled onto the back porch as the sun disappeared in the west and the stars began their nightly dance. For all my anger at her betrayal, I found myself crying again. I knew that one day I would have no more tears for her or our marriage. I would never tolerate her duplicity and infidelity. If I could find a way to make Derek pay, I would. My pride was wounded but still intact. But tonight, I allowed myself to mourn what was lost. By 10 p.m., I was beyond tired, so I headed upstairs, took a quick shower, and fell asleep 20 seconds after my head hit the pillow. Since we were sleeping in separate beds, I didn't hear her come in. Could have been 5 minutes after I fell asleep, or it could have been 3 a.m. I didn't know and I didn't care. I got up and out the door around 5:30 a.m., wanting to get in a quick workout before meeting with Patricia and the team at 7. Sarah's car was parked in the driveway, and the door to the guest room was closed. If I understood her schedule correctly, she had the first day of a 3-day weekend. That was helpful. We wouldn't have to cross paths much in the coming days. Michael, good to see you. Come on in and have a seat, Patricia greeted me. Private investigator Pat was in place, as was one of Patricia's assistants, an older woman in her 50s named Peggy Simons. Everyone called her Peg. Pat smiled and said hello. Peg asked if I wanted coffee. After a minute or two, we got down to business. Patricia began. We'd like to serve Sarah sometime this week, Michael. Pat has gathered more than enough evidence showing your wife's infidelity. Repeating the same behavior won't help our case, and you already owe Pat over $6,000, so I'd thank her and let her focus elsewhere. She smiled as she said the last sentence. It was obvious they were good friends. In turn, Pat just patted Patricia on the shoulder and got up to leave. I hope you get things settled as quickly and painlessly as possible, Michael, she said as she shook my hand. I thanked her and told her I sincerely hoped I never had to hire her again, but would be more than happy to refer anyone who needed her services to the best investigator around. Patricia and I exchanged a few ideas on how, when, and where to serve Sarah. I was hoping it could be done at work at a time when she and Derek would be together in a room full of people, probably at the end of the day on Thursday, since that would be her last day before her 3 days off. Patricia felt that waiting so long was only playing into Sarah's hands. Waiting means giving her a chance to figure out what's going on. You've kept your composure admirably over the past few weeks, Michael, but you must be at your limit. May I suggest we serve her tonight or tomorrow at the latest? One of Pat's associates has been watching the school, so he'll have an idea of when the best time would be to surprise her. I agreed that was reasonable. Last night I'd cried every tear I could shed over that lying woman. I was ready for the final confrontation. My thoughts went back to my favorite Clint Eastwood movie, The Outlaw Josie Wales, when Josie confronts his enemies. So you guys gonna pull those pistols or whistle Dixie? The challenge was thrown down. The fight was on. Patricia also discovered an obscure state law that allowed me to sue Derek Thompson for alienation of affection. Patricia was sure it would go nowhere, but the embarrassment of having everyone at the school know about it could seriously hurt his relationships and career prospects after student teaching. I was in complete agreement. We finally agreed that Patricia would call and give me a heads up when the service was completed. I would be home on the back porch, ready to talk to Sarah there. Patricia also wanted to have documentation of this conversation in case things got out of hand. She asked Peg to ensure that one of Pat's associates set up surveillance equipment on our back porch and be parked around the corner. If things got heated or Sarah became unstable, he could call the police. I couldn't imagine Sarah going that crazy. But then again, for weeks ago I would have called you insane if you'd suggested my wife would cheat on me with a student teacher. I spent the afternoon finalizing the contract details with Janet Meyer. By 3 p.m., I was exhausted, but we reached an agreement. Neither of us was 100% satisfied, so it was probably a fair deal. The teachers got a decent raise in base pay, overtime, and vacation days, and the district got a 5-year contract instead of the 3-year deal Janet had hoped for. Even Connie had to smile when I put the papers on her desk to take to the school board. I was about a 5-minute walk from home when my phone rang. It was Patricia Sharp. "So, counselor, how are we doing today?" Patricia chuckled. "Sorry, Michael. I know it's hard for you, and I'm not trying to make your situation any easier, but I've just heard from Pat." She volunteered to handle Sarah and Thompson herself. They had just finished a classroom observation session and were in the main office with another teacher and Mrs. Linda Hartwell, the assistant principal who oversees student teachers. Linda was there to complete Derek's mid-semester evaluation. Anyway, Pat showed up in the main office looking like Pat, which would intimidate almost anyone. She approached the receptionist and asked to speak with Sarah Harrison and Derek Thompson on an urgent matter. The receptionist directed her to the conference room where they were meeting. Apparently, student teacher Thompson was immediately defensive about the interruption. He stood up and asked Pat if she had an appointment and what this was about. When she said it was a personal matter that couldn't wait, he replied something to the effect that they were in an important meeting and she should schedule an appointment through proper channels. I'm quoting Pat. "Can you believe this little punk tries to lecture me about proper channels?" So I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Are you the student teacher known as Derek Thompson who's been playing house with a married woman?" He turned white as a sheet and barely squeezed out a yes. "Well, son, you've been served," she continued. The room got real quiet, and everyone was staring. Mrs. Hartwell looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. When I turned my attention to Sarah, I thought she was going to pass out. I kept my voice professional but firm. "And you, Mrs. Harrison, are you Sarah Harrison, the married woman in question?" She nodded and whispered, "Yes." "Well, ma'am, you've been served as well." Patricia told me it was one of the most professional yet devastating service calls Pat had ever made. Mrs. Hartwell immediately took control of the situation. She turned to Derek and said, "Mr. Thompson, you need to gather your belongings and leave the premises immediately. Your student teaching placement is terminated as of this moment." She also addressed Sarah directly. "Mrs. Harrison, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Do not return to work until you hear from central office and your union representative." Patricia finally stopped and pulled herself together. "So, Michael, your wife got the papers and is on her way home. Pat's associate is about a block away and will be ready to intervene if needed. Get ready, son. I think you're in for one of the worst moments of your life. Be firm but don't yell and scream. If it gets to be too much, just take a walk or go to another room. You'll get through this, Michael. The hardest part is over." We chatted some more, discussing the way forward. I got the impression Patricia wanted to stay on the line with me as long as possible, helping me prepare emotionally for the potential storm that was about to erupt. As we were about to finish talking, I heard Sarah's car pull into the driveway. I thanked Patricia and told her I'd call when we were done to give her an update. Sarah walked through the door and found me on the back porch. She looked terrible. She had obviously cried her eyes out on the way home. When I looked up, I thought a mixture of sadness and rage was staring back at me. She started, "How long have you known?" 3 bloody, miserable weeks, Sarah. How did you find out? Not that it matters, but I came home early from a conference in Raleigh to surprise my wife and spend some time with the woman I loved and cherished. When I arrived early Friday morning, you weren't here. I checked my Find My Friends app and saw you were somewhere near the airport. From that point on, things went downhill fast. That morning when you called me about the pen? Yes, you lied to me. You set me up. Well, I guess if anyone knows what lying is, it's you, since you've perfected it to an art form in your dealings with me. But yes, I lied. I wasn't trying to set you up. I was trying to determine if my world was really crumbling around me. Unfortunately, it was. She was silent for a moment. I didn't want to ask her anything. Now that everything was out in the open, I just wanted to deal with whatever had to be done and get away from her. Finally, she continued, I can't believe you had me served at work in front of my colleagues. I was humiliated. Take a number and get in line, Sarah. That was just cruel, Mike. Your betrayal is the cruelest thing anyone has ever done to me in my life. No matter how long you've been cheating on me with Derek Thompson, you unleashed cruelty after cruelty on the man you said you loved. Also, let me be very, very clear. I have no desire to rebuild a relationship with you on any level. I'm divorcing you, and I'm not looking back. You must be delusional if you think you can treat me like this and I'll want anything to do with you. Finally, she sat down on the other end of the couch from me. But Mike, I love you. I understand what you're saying, but I never meant to hurt you or be cruel to you. Derek was just a little fling. I know it was wrong, and I shouldn't have done it, but I know we can work through this as adults and grow stronger. Sarah, I'm trying to keep my composure, but you just destroyed our marriage. Any reasonable adult can understand that. Yes, I've seen photos and videos of several of your encounters at the Hampton Inn. You can't be so naive as to think that if you play the part of the repentant wife, I'll just ignore the pain and hurt you brought into my life. I can't believe you were spying on me and Derek. Why didn't you just talk to me about it when you found out? I could have ended my relationship with him right away. You took it to the extreme. Sarah, I shouldn't have had to spy on you. There shouldn't have been anything secret between us, especially infidelity. Why would I talk to you about anything? Nothing that comes out of your mouth will ever be believable to me again. Extreme is the infidelity of your faithful husband. Sarah, look in the damn mirror for a moment and pray that you see the truth. I had no idea if my suddenly clueless wife understood any of this. Nothing seemed to get through to her. She was just looking for an easy way out, to brush off her betrayal. Every time she opened her mouth, more nonsense flew out. Mike, divorce is the last thing we both want. Not only do we live here, but we work in the same district. What will people think? It would be so embarrassing if we got divorced while living and working in the same place. And how humiliating for both of us if coworkers and friends hear some of these details. Come on. Baby, you realize how bad that would be for both of us. Sarah, I've been living with embarrassment and humiliation since that Friday morning when I saw you and that jerk walk out of the Hampton Inn right after you lied to me on the phone about where you were and what you were doing. The divorce will be a welcome relief to me because the attention will be directed at you when people find out about your betrayal and infidelity. I'd ask you if Derek was your first and only extramarital affair, but no matter what you say, I won't believe you. Thank God we don't have children yet. The thought of raising kids with you makes me sick. Why the hell would you want to stay married to a man you have zero respect for? Mike, what can I say to make you realize that Derek was just an infatuation, an affair, nothing more? No emotion, no love. I realize now it was wrong of me to fool around, but of course you should know that I love you and only want to be with you. I promise that from now on, I will never even look at another man. Well, Sarah, if you say so, let me tell you, you must be the most delusional person who ever walked the planet. You lied to me and cheated on me for months, then you gave me an STD you contracted from your boyfriend, and I'm supposed to just say, okay, honey, don't worry, let's just pretend nothing happened and go back to our honeymoon phase? Let me be very clear, Sarah. I will never touch you again. I'll divorce you as soon as possible. Even if I'm financially ruined, I'd rather live in a trailer, broke and alone, than in a mansion with you. The The pain I've been experiencing for the past month has been overwhelming. If it wasn't for the support of family and friends, I'm pretty sure I'd be lying face down in a ditch right now. You did this to me, Sarah. Your cheating, lies, callousness, and utter disrespect for me almost destroyed me. But you didn't, Sarah. I'm still standing, and I intend to move forward as best I can, keeping you in my rearview mirror and never looking back. I don't know if I managed to get through to her, but tears came to her eyes. I'm sorry, Mike, was all she said before heading upstairs to the bedroom. Starting to realize what she had done and the consequences that would follow, sorry wasn't nearly enough to describe what I felt about her. Sarah, I said in response. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.